Podcast host Joe Rogan unleashed on the Democratic Party in a new episode. Let's take a look.
Look, if Biden died tomorrow, and then what do they do with Kamala Harris? They're going to put her on the moon? Like, what are they going to do? She's the vice president. So if he dies, she becomes the president, which is wild when you hear that lady talk.
What if like Biden says, like in, I don't know, May, he says, I'm just not feeling up to it. And then they say Kamala's now the president. She's the first female president. And then she steps down at the convention and they said, well, let's give it to Newsom. I mean, do you think that's a plausible scenario?
Is possible, but it would be a real problem for people that are Kamala Harris supporters, and believe it or not, they exist.
Yeah, but I'm sure the Democratic Party is just like calculating
have to be.
How big is this and what's the thing?
I think they have no cards. And they're looking at this game, and I don't know. I think they're depending upon party loyalty, and they're depending upon Trump getting convicted and arrested. I mean, and imprisoned rather. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't think it is. It doesn't seem. It just seems like it's a bunch of trumped up charges. No pun intended.
All right. First, I have to take issue with this idea that there's an actual Kamala Harris constituency out there. There is not. If you're very online, it will sometimes feel that way because she has these K-Hive trolls at her disposal. But there was no organic constituency for Kamala Harris, as evidenced by the fact that she had to drop out of the Democratic primary in 2020 because it was clear that she was going to lose in her home state of California, where she was a senator, to Andrew Yang, who was barely a quantity on the political horizon at that time.
Yeah, very true. It really does kind of reek of astroturfing, the whole K-Hive social media movement. But Joe's obviously raising a larger point and problem for the Democratic Party, which is they don't have a very deep bench, if you could even call it a bench at all, if there's anyone even sitting on it. And there have been several Democratic allies who have publicly suggested that Joe Biden should drop out of his run for re-election, most notably David Axelrod, who in a Twitter thread suggested that if Joe Biden were to continue to run, that it would be for his own personal benefit as opposed to for the good of the country.
And they dogpiled him for it.
They did.
The establishment went after him and he had to walk it back.
Yeah. And meanwhile, we have this shadow debate going on tonight, right, between Gavin Newsom and Ron DeSantis. There was a ton of speculation that Trump wasn't going to end up running and it was going to be DeSantis, and then Newsom would replace Biden. And now they're, of course, playing right into that narrative by having this debate on Fox News tonight. While DeSantis, by the way, has fallen underneath Nikki Haley in the New Hampshire polls. So that seems like he's getting closer and closer to perhaps a decision to drop out of the race. The Koch-backed Americans for Prosperity Action just endorsed Nikki Haley. They're going to spend millions of dollars propping up her soon-to-be failed campaign as well. But I don't know. I mean, can the Democratic Party legitimately push out Biden without him willingly stepping aside?
So the problem is, first of all, that they seem not to want to do that at all. They're really committed to Joe Biden as a candidate, as evidenced by the fact that they've shut down the primary. I mean, to the extent that the Democrats don't have a deep bench, it's very much their own doing. And I'm not just talking about the refusal to host a Democratic primary, the refusal to give of the liberal cable shows to allow Marianne Williamson to have any airtime whatsoever, whether it's in a town hall or any other kind of format, things that they've extended to Republican candidates, despite it being a liberal channel, as we discussed in a different segment. MSNBC loves a person who's Republican not named Trump more than they do anybody who could be plausibly considered to be on the left. But it goes back even before this current primary season, if you want to call it that. Remember, even back in 2020, for the crime of pointing out that Joe Biden was old and seemed not to be following debate questions and answers accurately, both Cory Booker and what's his face from Texas, one of the twins, Julian Castro were both sidelined for bringing it up in the spin room. They were like, well, yeah, like he seemed not to be following the conversation. Have we heard from them since then? Like literally, those were our kind of up and coming the Democratic Party's up and coming stars at the time. Have you heard a peep from them or anything about a presidential ambition since then?
No, I mean, that's a really good point. And the perceived issues with Joe Biden's cognitive state have only declined more rapidly, obviously, since he took office. This was exactly what these people were warning about, right? Was that he couldn't even handle the rigors of a campaign. How was he going to handle the rigor of being president? I don't know if you watched the turkey pardon last week.
Ooh.
It was brutal.
The Britney Spears.
Yeah, he confused Britney, Taylor, and Beyonce. But even beyond that, it was his birthday, his 81st birthday. And his team had written several jokes about his age into the script that he either bungled or delivered in a way such that it actually only drew more attention to the fact that his little jog as he goes out to his events is not fooling anybody about his capabilities.
And then he had the birthday cake that looked like a pyre because it had so many candles on it. And it was like a visual representation of the "this is fine" meme.
Yes. I mean, like, we talked already about like the Bidenomics decision and then posting that cake photo and writing the jokes about his age and about how, don't worry, even though the turkey pardon tradition is 76 years old, I promise I wasn't at the first one because I was too young. Sometimes the strategy, I think it speaks to how a lot of the members of the Biden administration and Biden campaign are very much the Obama holdovers who were at lower level positions at that time and were very inexperienced. And instead of getting experience during this break of 4 years, they kind of just milled around cable news and milled around lobbying groups and then came back and are just equally as inept as they were 5-6 years ago. Yeah,
I don't know what I can attribute it to. All I know is that it's not working. And I want to be really clear. It's not just an age issue.
Exactly.
No one is, first of all, none of these people are young whippersnappers in Congress. Bernie Sanders is old, but he's not getting hit for being bumbling and incoherent. Joe Biden specifically, Donald Trump is old, and he's not getting hit for those reasons either. Biden specifically is causing people who frankly liked him, or at least were okay with him, to be genuinely concerned about his capacity to make it through the next 4 years. And the fact that Kamala Harris, who does not have high favorability ratings, who is not liked, is the number 2, is not inspiring confidence among the American public.
It's pretty amazing, too, that Kamala Harris in pretty much every poll has a lower favorability rating than Joe Biden, yet polls ahead of him in these head-to-head matchups with Trump. I mean, that kind of tells you everything that you need to know.
I think it does tell you something about how concerned people are, frankly, about his age and not, his stamina, Biden's stamina.
And I think people within the Biden camp like to wave away the concerns because a lot of the viral moments are these silly gaffes like confusing Britney Spears and Taylor Swift. But we also can't forget that at this APEC conference a couple of weeks ago, you saw Antony Blinken shake his head in just frustration and perhaps a little bit of terror that Joe Biden threw out all diplomacy out the window and called Xi Jinping a dictator to his face. And I know a lot of people were like, oh, well, of course you should call a dictator a dictator. Like, okay, let's not be naive.
If you're gonna act on it, like if you were a principled person who says, she is a dictator and we're not going to deal with China, like he said about Saudi Arabia, we're going to make Saudi Arabia a pariah. Well, then stand by it, but don't say stuff like that.
Yeah,
and then
if you're going to sit there and beg the guy to stop sending fentanyl across the U.S. border, then you have to play the game. And he can't do it because he's not capable of doing it. All right. Tomorrow on Rising, I'm going to be back with Jessica Burbank. Bree, it was great to be here with you today.
It's always a pleasure, Amber. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while you're on the go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. Take care.